Halftime show. I just made a joke that I'm the same age as Tyler to him. He didn't even blink.
I'm hearing something in the background.
Did not even blink. Halftime show. Terry Ford, Tyler Head, same age. Tyler and I.
Nah.
My shoes are older than you, by the way.
What were you doing in 1996?
Is that the year you were born?
That was the year I was born.
The Orioles,
what was happening in your life?
The Orioles made it to the American League Championship Series. That was the Jeffrey Mayer year.
Okay.
Orioles lost to the Yankees because that little punk Jeffrey Mayer, who when I was a crazy fan, hated.
Still doesn't bother you to this day?
Nah, I'm over it now. Honestly, back then I wanted him to have a miserable life and spend it living under a bridge, homeless and in poverty and misery. But I got over that once I went to crazy fan rehab.
Yeah.
And stopped being a crazy fan. I'm okay with Jeffrey Mayer. Now, but 1996, Orioles lost the American League Championship Series. What else was going on in 96? Where was I working in 96? I was
Olympics
in Wisconsin.
Were 96.
Olympics were 96 in Atlanta.
Yep.
If I remember.
I was 2 weeks old when the torch came through.
Really?
Yep.
Wow. So you remember that?
Nope. There's a picture of me there. I don't remember it.
Oh, really? So the family took you
I was there.
Big deal. Big goings on.
Yeah.
I was in Wisconsin. That was my first year working in Wisconsin was 96.
Okay. So were you there for the Packers? You were there for the Packers going to the Super Bowl then?
I was there.
Was that the next year?
For back-to-back years.
Yeah,
Because they beat New England and New Orleans, and then they lost to Denver and San Diego. We did our morning show from both cities that week.
Gotcha.
New Orleans was stupid fun. San Diego's cool. I mean, they got the Gas Lamp District, and it's a good time.
Yeah.
But New Orleans for a week, Super Bowl week in New Orleans.
That's dangerous.
It was very dangerous, especially.
I've always wondered why they keep going back there for Super Bowls.
Yeah, especially Terry Ford at that age, let loose in New Orleans in the French Quarter was,
So, that was the year I was born.
That's stories we can do on the After Hours podcast.
Yeah.
That was the year you were born.
We'll have to get the unfiltered thing going sometime.
That's the year you were born, huh?
96,
Now I really feel old. Okay.
Never been alive to see a Cowboys Super Bowl, by the way.
How funny is that? How funny is that? And you know what? Before 96, if you would have told Cowboy fans, after I think it was 95 when they beat the Steelers, if you would have told Cowboy fans that's the last one you're going to see for at least 30 years,
They wouldn't have believed you.
they laughed at you.
Yeah.
We the Cowboys.
Listen, you never know when the dynasty ends.
I always say enjoy the ride when your teams are winning. And look, I'm not to say you don't have to have expectation and you don't have to be upset if your team underachieves. They should have gone to a Super Bowl. They only made the playoffs. I'm not saying you can't be upset about all that stuff, but also enjoy it because when it ends, there's no warning when it's going to end.
If you went to Kansas City right now and told a Chiefs fan, hey, that Super Bowl you just lost to the Eagles, last one you're going to see until 2055, they would laugh right in your face.
They would laugh at you. We got Patrick Mahomes.
Yeah.
Okay.
All right.
Well, ask Aaron Rodgers. Ask Dan Marino, guys who went to Super Bowls earlier in their careers and never went back.
Yeah. Oh, of course Aaron Rodgers is going to get another shot at this thing.
He's going to win at least 2 or 3 more of these, right?
This is the beginning of the Rodgers era.
Mm-hmm. No? Same thing with Marino. He got there early in his career. I said, you got curb stomped by San Francisco, so what? You'll be back to this thing 3, 4, 5 times.
Nope.
Never. Unless he bought a ticket. So
Crazy.
Enjoy the dynasties, enjoy the ride when your team's successful, because you never know.
Jimmy Garoppolo has as many Super Bowl appearances as Dan Marino and Aaron Rodgers.
By the way,
about that.
I'll give you another one. Jeff Hostetler, Trent Dilfer, Brad Johnson, all have more Super Bowl rings than Dan Marino and Dan Fouts.
That's insane. Sports are weird, man.
No, absolutely. Absolutely. I appreciate you hanging out with us today. David Dare, he was here this morning. So we let Dave go. Our buddy Commander Ed Bird is in here running the show today for us. We appreciate Ed like always.
Dave told me he had an unwelcome guest sitting on his front doorstep when he left this morning at 4-something a.m.
Well, he probably told the story. I don't know if he told the story on the air with the morning show because I didn't get to listen to the whole 3 hours, so I don't know if he told the story or not. We'll save it for tomorrow just in case. Well, we'll save it for Monday because everything's clunky tomorrow too.
Right.
So maybe Dave will tell the story on Monday of the. Well, I'll tell you the one thing was what started the whole thing. He had a big spider outside his door. So he was chasing the spider away from his door and ran into his guest. I said, didn't care much about the spider after that, did you, Dave?
I said the list of priorities shifted at that moment.
Quickly. Oh, man, we appreciate Ed being here, jumping in for Dave today here on the game. All right, and tomorrow you're going to do the early stuff, so you won't be here tomorrow at noon because you don't want to do 3 shows in one day.
No, I'm good.
What's up with you, man?
Well, most people don't realize it, but when you talk for 6 hours straight in a day, it takes a lot out of you.
Well, the thing about it, too, Elijah and I were talking about this earlier, like when you host solo, 'cause I host solo shows for years.
Yeah.
After you talk for 3, I was doing like 4 hours, whatever. After you talk for 3 or 4 hours, you're doing solo, you just want to get in the car and hear you don't want to talk to anybody.
Oh, yeah, no.
Yeah, you're done.
When my wife's schedule's a little bit different now, but for a while we were on opposite schedules, so I'd go home and kind of be by myself for the rest of the day. I wouldn't say anything. I'd keep my mouth shut for a good 5-6 hours once I left here because I was like, I've talked enough. I don't want to say anymore.
Well, the funny thing is, like, someone, like, again, like, I'd get a call, like, I get off the air, I get in the car, and my phone's ringing, like 5 minutes after I go off there.
You
I'm
think
not
about it,
answering.
you're like,
nope.
Not going to happen.
Talk to you later
I've
on.
talked enough.
I need just to sit in silence. I wouldn't even have the radio on or anything. I just drive in silence.
Yep.
It was nice. All right. Obviously, the baseball season is over, and now is the moving forward into the off season for Carolina baseball, a ginormously important off season. And one of the biggest things in this off season, as we started our journey, was our Twitter poll yesterday. And I believe it's officially over. So the numbers on the Twitter poll, I always love when it disappears as soon as it stops being pinned and you got to find it. Our Twitter poll basically was simple. It was about the baseball program. And do you feel like after this season, do you feel like A, just blow the whole thing up and start over? B, I'm patient. I'm disappointed but patient. C was I'm patient, ... for now, which means I've got patience. I don't know how much I'm going to have after this, though.
Yeah.
And overwhelmingly, over 70%, and we had over 300 and some votes, and we appreciate you, like always, jumping in our Twitter polls. Thank you. And overwhelmingly, over 70% of the people who voted said, blow it up. Blow it up.
Is that surprising, though?
I thought that would be the majority.
Mm-hmm.
I didn't think it would go into the 70s. I thought it'd be more like maybe in the 60s or something. I thought more people would say be patient. But this just shows you the level of, first of all, how terrible the season was.
Sure.
Number one. And two, how proud the tradition is here, and how the feeling of pride this fan base takes in Gamecock baseball. And three, just our overall lack of patience anymore for anything to be patient.
Sure.
So I think all three things play into it. And looking at the poll again, I thought it'd be a little bit more patience. But I understand. But let me just say this: I understand. Let's just get that out of the way first. I'm not. Every now and then we do these, Tyler, and you go like this. What? Really? The majority goes that way? And look, there's no right or wrong ever. It's an opinion. That's what we want. We're in the opinion business. But this one, I get it. I do. I understand for the reasons we just gave. I get it. I do. It was historically awful. It was the worst season ever. Was that fair?
Yeah, no, it is. Again,
Yeah,
you've been in
the
the
worst
SEC
season
for over
ever.
30 years. I've never had a season this bad.
Yeah, and when you had the worst season ever, and the other part of it too is you couldn't wait to get rid of the last guy because you thought, look, your job is to get to Omaha.
Yeah.
You're not getting to Omaha, Chief. We need someone. You've never been to Omaha,
Yeah,
by the way.
we gave you 7-8 years and you didn't get there.
it. So now we need somebody in here who's going to get us to Omaha. And you bring in a well-decorated head coach who has been to Omaha 7 times in total, 1 at Notre Dame, 6 at LSU, I believe,
Yeah, I
won a
think that
national
sounds right.
championship
Yep.
at LSU. Guys won 6 SEC tournaments, for I believe, for the love of God.
But by the way, I listened back to his introductory presser yesterday, and Coach Tanner in his introduction said over the course of I think a 13 or 15 year span, he won some form of a championship in almost every single one of those years, whether it be SEC regular season, tournament title, regional, super regional, or the College World Series. He hoisted some kind of trophy almost every single year for a prolonged period of time. Obviously, it didn't happen this year.
Right. They don't give you hardware for this kind of year.
No.
So it's just, you got a guy who's got a resume, right?
Yeah.
And you go like this, a Gamecock fan. All right, we got a dude. And it was horrific. So I understand, and then all the things that some people were saying, which again are legit concerns, well, has been out of the game for 3 years, 67 years old, things of that nature, and the game has changed even in 3 years. And some of those things that people were, whether concerned or gave you the high eye, the side eye about.
Yeah.
Now those concerns get turned up 100, right?
Right. And look, there was a lot of names that were being talked about last year when this hire was being made. And let's just say any of these other guys, end up getting hired. Like Cliff Godwin from East Carolina was a hot name and somebody that if we're putting two and two together, I feel like Coach Mainieri was talking to Mainieri, or Coach Tanner was talking to Mainieri about when Mainieri ends up obviously getting the job, because they had a prior connection where Cliff Godwin had been under Coach Mainieri. But let's say Cliff Godwin got here, or Landon Powell, or one of those names that everybody was odd about, wanting to come here to South Carolina. If they had the exact same season this year, yeah, people would be upset, but not quite as upset, because again, you would say, okay, well, those guys are taking up a step of competition level. They never coached in the SEC. We'll let them get acclimated a little bit before we, rain fire down on them and say they should be fired. But for a guy that came in here with the track record that he did, saying, hey, this isn't going to be a rebuild. Right. We're going to come in and hit the ground running, and to do this, yeah, people are upset.
And they want to start over. I get the whole thing. I totally understand. And, Jordan Kay from the state yesterday put it out according to sources. Paul Mainieri will be back next year. Coach Mainieri said he's coming back.
Yep.
And other multiple sources of people we know are saying, yeah, it feels like that there'll be a year two. And then we did the Twitter poll, and the Twitter poll was like, we don't really want a year two. And look, again, if this would have ended after year one, again, like I said, I totally understand.
Mm-hmm.
But the year two thing, let's examine that up next, because I understand that. And let's play, what if you were the AD? What would you do? And let's present the facts of this, because it's not as simple as, wow, this was a historically ugly season. This was so ugly. This was Rex Ryan in a bikini ugly.
I didn't need that image. Thank you.
You're welcome. And you have to move on now. Don't care about past resume. Don't care about Hall of Fames. I don't care. You got to move on. It's not that simple in this conversation, even though a lot of folks think it should be. So let's discuss it next, because that's the reality. It feels like, unless something drastically changes, there will be a year two for Coach Mainieri at South Carolina. Let's investigate that next here on the Halftime Show. Ed Bird's punching the buttons. Tyler's here. I'm Terry Ford. We're here till 3 on the game. Halftime show. Ed Bird controlling the ship. Tyler Heads here. I'm Terry Ford. We're going up until 3 here on the game. All right, so as we are moving forward with the offseason for Carolina baseball, and we were going over the Twitter poll where over 70% of the folks in the poll said that they should blow this thing up and start it over next year. I was like, okay, I get it, because it was it's the worst season in the history of the program. But it's not that simple. And if you look at the other side of it, let's play Jeremiah Donati for a minute. Man, I'd like to have that hair. Dude's got a great head of hair. Quite jealous.
Well, he's like 6'6".
Yeah, he's
a
like,
big guy.
You know, I mean, I'm like between 6'1" and 6'2". I don't hurt my neck a lot.
Yeah.
Put it that way. I'm like, oh my God, look at this guy. So you're sitting there and you see this season and you see what's happened. Obviously, the first thing you do is you sit down with Coach Mainieri and say, okay, let's talk about what happened. Why do you think this went the way it did? That's number one. Number two, what are you going to do to correct it? 3, what do you think? Let's start off with you as a head coach. What do you think? What direction do you think you have to evolve, or maybe do things different than you've done in your entire career because the game's different?
Yep.
What did you learn since you've been away from the game for 3 years, actually coaching for a year? All those questions you go down with Coach Mainieri in a close the door. By the way, go to the bathroom first. We're going to be in here for a while. You got something to drink? Come on in. We might have to order lunch.
Yeah.
But let's have a nice deep dive talk. Now, after you have that talk, and if that's part of this, obviously. But when you're sitting around going, all right, it was the coach's first year. He has a Hall of Fame resume. Nobody saw this coming. This wasn't his plan. He told me he didn't have a plan to have the worst season in the history of the program.
Right.
It's 1 year. You typically give a guy more than 1 year, even if he doesn't have this resume. And then the other part of this is the financial piece. If you move on and go blow it up, so to speak, you are going to be spending, is it about $7 million to pay off Coach Mainieri and the staff, roughly, in that neighborhood. Then you're going to spend at least that much for the new head coach and the staff.
Likely, if you're going to hire somebody of
if
quality.
You're hiring if your goal is to get to Omaha and again you want to hire a dudes cost between $1.5 to $2 million.
Yeah, somewhere in
That's
that
dude
neighborhood.
range.
And you might be having to buy out what's left of his contract at another school.
Right. I mean, you see the names, and some of these names were bounced around here last year. Whether, you're talking about O'Connell at Virginia, you're talking about Walter at Wake Forest. Skip Johnson's name has been talked about, Mississippi State, the Oklahoma coach. These guys have all been to Omaha. They know how to get to Omaha. They are coaches that have been coaching in college baseball. They didn't take any time off. They didn't retire. Those guys are going to be $1.5 to $2 million in that neighborhood to talk about guys like that.
Yep.
Plus, you're right. Your buyout situations are there. You've got a coaching staff. You also have to pay. So let's just say the same amount of money. Let's say you got to go $14 million total to make this happen. Is this the worst possible time financially in the world of college athletics to be throwing $14 million at a baseball program? No matter how tradition-based?
Absolutely. Yes.
So, again, if you're Jeremiah Donati, you have to look at the financial piece of this whole thing because rev share's coming. And so at the end of the day, you've got to factor all this stuff in. And if this is going to be year 2, all those factors of A, Hall of Fame coach, B, it's only his first year, C, he gets the lay of the land after being out 3 years, D, I want to be patient and give a man of this ilk his second season to see if he can get it where it needs to be. And then let's get to 5, the financial piece of it, which might even be number 1, Tyler, for all I know.
It probably is.
So I see why, if Coach Mainieri is getting year 2, for all those reasons, I see why. Now, are the fans happy? Of course not. Do I understand? Of course. I mean, if you're Jeremiah Donati, are you also thinking about the 14 people that were in the stands at Founders and it was an LSU home series, and that's unacceptable at such a tradition-laden place like South Carolina when it comes to baseball? Sure, you got to think about that. Do you have to think about the people with a lot of money who in a collective world, you also need to be happy and hitting your Venmo?
Yep.
Yes. So I'm not saying those things don't matter, but when you take all these factors, The second year, you go, even like for me, it's like even if you're a fan and you don't like it, you almost have to go like this. Oh, I guess that makes sense. Because in a lot of ways, it might not be what you want, but it might be what you have to do because of the climate that you're in right now in college athletics.
Yeah, and you know, I know Maneri alluded to it the other day. That, look, his first year at LSU wasn't great. It was not this bad. Wasn't great, and they ended up in the College World Series the next year, won the national championship in year number 3. So I know it's not the biggest ray of sunshine, but you at least have that little gleam of, okay, at least he's been in this kind of somewhat situation before and been able to work his way out of it, and you just have to hopefully put your faith in his ability to do that in year number 2, which again we'll see. The hype going into the 2026 season, I don't think it's going to be very high. And look, you can still go run roughshod through the mid majors and win those first 18 games or whatever, but you got to start winning conference games next year for people to really get excited about what you're doing.
Well, the first test is going to be when you have the Clemson series.
That too.
And then you get to the SEC, and that's where you're going to be. You're going to be looked at for that next year. But again, it does go back to the point of, yes, this is a guy who has won everywhere. We don't count Air Force. That was a very difficult place to win. But Notre Dame and LSU. Now, again, here's the thing. Notre Dame was a good program. LSU is a good program. Obviously, LSU has been iconic.
Still are.
And they still are. And Notre Dame was good before Coach Maneri got there. But South Carolina was good last year. So it was almost like the same type of, he took over a good program.
Yeah.
And it just went off the rails bad.
And again, if you essentially treaded water and you got, because they were the 2 seed in the NC State regional last year, if you ended up being a 2 seed in someone else's regional this year, won around 12, 13 games in conference, basically did the exact same thing Kingston did last year, I think everybody would have said, okay, it's pretty acceptable for a first year. Obviously, some people had the expectations of Omaha, but I think you would look at that and say, okay, it's a good starting point.
Yeah, and so if you take a look at this from all these angles that an athletic director has to look at it, I get year 2. Matter of fact, if I was the AD, I probably would do year 2 as well when you have all these factors in front of you. Knowing that, and it's not the most popular decision among your fan base, but you have so many variables on this that don't make it that simple. And so if Jeremiah Donati decide, and it seems like he has decided to bring back Coach Maneri for year 2, I get it. I do. And, sometimes, even though you don't like something, you have to understand, okay, that's why this is being done, and let's just hope year 2 is a hell of a lot better than year 1, because to be honest, if year 2 isn't a lot better, you might not have a year 3. And because this can't go, well, you won 6 games, now you won 10 or 9 in the SEC. No, this has to be where you're sniffing around the NCAA tournament. You're around that 12, 13 win mark in conference. You can't be going from 6 wins to 8 or 9 in SEC play in year 2. That's just me thinking that. That's just me.
Yeah,
but.
No, you can't go into Hoover again saying, well, got to win 5 games, want to make the tournament. Like, that's unacceptable. And he may not even be the coach by that point in time if that's the case.
Well, yeah, so this thing goes like anything near what you got this year, there won't be a year 3, and there might not even be a finish of a year 2, because everybody might just go, you know what, let's all just part company.
What did Mississippi State do with Lamonas a couple weeks ago? They said, you know what, this ain't going well. Let's go ahead and bite the bullet, get them out of here, and start working on next year.
And in today's world, the way everything goes with calendars and NILs and transfer portals, that was a smart move by Mississippi State, because if you weren't going to keep Chris Lamonis and you knew that, why get started early?
What's the point to prolonging this?
And you also do? You get those back channels going for coaches.
You do.
You turn them up even more. Because, look, a smart AD, a couple of weeks before you fired Lamonis, at least a couple of weeks, if not longer, you've already been kind of on the down low in the back channels to begin with, right?
They say every AD is supposed to have that list in their desk.
Oh, you have a list
of names that if at the drop of the hat you had to find a coach, you know who you're looking for.
Well, I mean, if David Dare retires, we have a list.
We do. Ed Bird, top of that list.
Absolutely. Ed Bird might turn us down. He said, I don't want to work with you idiots.
Well, I don't know if we can afford him. That's the problem.
Well, Ed does live a lifestyle.
He does.
You ever see Ed on social media? Ed Bird's the Birdman has a lifestyle.
Birdman on the coast.
The Birdman of the coast has a lifestyle, whether it's doing his radio shows on the internet to traveling all over the place. See these pictures of him and the wife knocking down martinis like some island somewhere. I want Ed Bird's life.
I think he's just a modern-day James Bond, if we're being honest.
So anyway, yeah, I mean, at the end of the day, I get it. I understand it. And if I was in that office, I'd probably go the same way, looking at all these variables and all these factors.
Yep.
And it won't be the most popular decision. It won't. But look, to be honest, if you're an athletic director, your job isn't to be the most well-liked. Your job is to make the right decisions in what you think, with all of the information you have in front of you and your resources, to make the right decisions moving forward for whatever program or the athletic department. That's where you're at.
Yep.
That's where you're at. All right, just in case you just woke up, Jeffrey Lurie had quite a speech at the owners' meeting. I don't know how we're actually going to say this on the air without saying it. Jeffrey Lurie, the owner of the Eagles. Now, he got what he wanted. The tush push did not get banned, which it shouldn't have. But Jeffrey Lurie, in his impassioned speech, went a little bit too far with mixed company in the room. If you haven't heard about this, we'll tell you next on the halftime show. Tyler Head's here. The James Bond of South Carolina, Ed Bird. I'm Terry Ford. We're going to 3 on the game. All right. So, Jeffrey Lurie, the owner of the Philadelphia Eagles, got up yesterday at the owners' meetings, a little bit before the vote was going to be made about banning the brotherly shove, the tush push, the short yardage play on 4th and 1 that the Eagles have pretty much mastered. And Lurie got up and made this impassioned speech and then said at the end that it really was for the Eagles a win-win because if they get to keep the play, great. And if they don't, they came up with a play so unstoppable that the league had to ban it with a rule. It was like...
Careful here.
I'll put it this way. You can look it up on the internet. All you got to do is Google Jeffrey Lurie's speech, and you will get what he said. And I will say this. It's something that happens in every teenage boy's life.
Sure.
How's that?
And I'll say it's not a bad comparison.
No. Matter of fact, it was a pretty good comparison.
But the fact that you're in this room with billionaires, essentially, that own 32 of them, that own these NFL teams, and that's in that moment what you thought of as the comparison to whichever way this ruling was going to go.
And there were women in the room. There was mixed. It was mixed genders in the room. And the ironic part is like Troy Vincent, executive in the NFL, basically chastised Lurie for saying it in the room, and things got kind of heated. But my thing when people get like the people in that room, the owners who got offended about it, have, by the way, in private said things 100 times worse.
Oh, sure.
To women, by the way.
Of course. We have a track record of that with some of them.
Yes, we do. So, yeah, Lurie shouldn't have picked that analogy, even though he's right with the analogy.
Yeah.
You know how we always say this on the show. Sometimes you're right, but you're wrong.
But like, think about Jeff Lurie and the Eagles organization. You just won the Super Bowl. You obviously, like you said, whichever way this goes, it's fine for the Eagles. Like, you're on cloud 9 right now.
Sure.
You are flying a mile above everybody else. You're feeling good. So, yeah, I guess it's not surprising that this would come out in the middle of his impassioned speech, which I'm assuming Jason Kelce was sitting there next to him after giving his analysis of how to push tushes. Is he the tush push expert?
He is a tush push pioneer.
Yeah, is he the expert of pushing butts?
Yes.
In
Nobody
a football game.
Can push butts like. Well, he was part of he was in that big mash of guys when all the butt pushing was going on.
Yeah.
So,
if anything, more people were pushing into his butt.
Yes.
Because he's over the ball
right.
and leading the way for Jalen Hurts.
So if you think about it for a minute, he's not getting his pushed, but he's pushing forward while they push Jalen Hurts.
Yes.
So he's like.
And the funny thing is, he's a smaller offensive lineman.
Yeah.
So he was the one getting lost in the pile at the bottom against guys bigger than him.
Exactly. So it wasn't banned, and Lurie just went a little sideways and then got, chastised about it. And I do get it. I understand Jeff probably wasn't the best analogy to use in this room at this time with this company. It's like me. I will throw around a cuss word or two.
Or two.
A sentence.
Or 7. I quite frankly don't know how you don't say it when the microphone. Your ability to turn it on and off is actually impressive.
So I can cuss a bit. But I have very religious family on both sides. And when I go see them, I leave it in the car.
Well, you inevitably slip up at some point, right? And then your aunt's beating you with her shoe.
One time I did, and my aunt beat me with her shoe. I think you got it. My aunt at one time slipped up. It was funny. Never heard her cuss. Very religious. Love her to death. My Aunt Beulah, she's no longer with us. And yes, if you picture what Aunt Beulah looked like, you're exactly right. So I said something. I was joking around, just being a goober. And I did when my girlfriend and I were just first started seeing each other.
Yeah.
And we were visiting because my aunt was living in Marion, North Carolina, or outside of Asheville. And so we went to visit her, and then we were going to hang out in Asheville and have some fun. So, and she was showing pictures to my girlfriend, the embarrassing photos we all have of ourselves when we were kids. Of
course.
And I said something, and she turned around and she said, "Terry, honey, you so full of bleep." And I just started I fell off the chair.
Yeah.
I was laughing so hard, and I was so shocked. And my girlfriend's like, "What?" I go, and I looked up at her. I go, "That's the first time you ever cussed in front of me in your life?" And she stopped for a minute. She goes, "I guess you're right." I go, "Is that the first time you ever cussed in your life?" She goes, "Oh, God, no. Just in front of you." So,
but growing up, we would have never believed it, right?
my uncle, who was her husband, Uncle Woodrow, and you figure what a Woodrow looks like? Yes.
Wait, Woodrow and Beulah.
Yes.
That sounds like a deep South older couple.
Isn't that like old school computer dating right there?
Yes,
Beulah,
very
Woodrow?
much so.
Well, he would go in the bathroom and cuss because he was so religious, right?
Okay, all right.
He didn't want to cuss in front of anybody. And one time I was older, he did it, and I knocked on the bathroom door. I said, Uncle Woodrow, yeah, God can hear you in the bathroom. You know that, right? He came out and started laughing. But anyway, so the point I'm saying is in certain company, you just don't say things.
Yeah, sure.
Even if you get it going like Jeffrey Lurie had it going, bro.
Yeah, look, we've all had to get up and give presentations in front of people that we work with and executives and all those kind of things. And, the way you talk about things in front of those people that sign your checks and those kind of things, probably not the same way that, you BS around the water cooler
Right.
with people that you work with.
Little different vibe.
You gotta choose your words.
Like when I'm talking to you goofs,
Sure.
or the same thing as I do to my Aunt Beulah and Uncle Woodrow back in the days.
Sure.
I know you're stunned. to
I
hear
know.
that. Anyway, just in case you just woke up here on the game on the halftime show, Terry Ford, Tyler Ed Bird. And by the way, real quick, SEC tournament is going on in Hoover. That was an A&M home run. A&M now leading Auburn 3-0, top of the third. A&M has got to make a run in this tournament.
Yeah, A&M up 3-0, 3-run shot by Caden Kent. I'm sure Jeff Kent still hasn't cracked a smile if he's in the crowd.
Nope. Doesn't smile.
No, he doesn't.
Never has.
He's always looks angry no matter what.
Because he is.
Watching, they had the camera on him at the World Series last year, and every time Caden was up to bat, it was cutting back and forth to him, and just the most displeased man you've ever seen in your life.
I've talked to people who covered the Giants in the Kent era. That's Jeff Kent.
Yeah. Oh, he was very much hated.
Jeff Kent.
When people started siding with Barry Bonds over him, that's telling.
I had a guy tell me who covered that Giant team. There he is, and he's not smiling.
He's not smiling. He's not happy.
Just sitting there.
Kid just hit a 3-run home run, and he's angry.
Well, wasn't it a slam, son? I talked to one guy who covered the team, said Bonds would be, because Bonds had like 2 or 3 lockers.
Yeah.
Kent had the same thing. And Bonds had a recliner and all this other stuff and everything. And nobody liked Bonds and nobody liked Kent. And to the point of, there were people that sometimes would rather side with Bonds than side with Kent. And Bonds might be the most unlikable guy in baseball to a lot of people.
Yeah.
That shows you how unlikable Jeff Kent could be. All right. Last night, get ready here, Ed Bird. We're going to get a couple of cuts here real fast. Last night, one of the most craziest, kookiest, compelling NBA playoff games you'll ever see happened between Indiana and the Knicks. Really, the Knicks dominated this game for 44 minutes. Problem is, the game's 48.
Yep.
And then the Knicks did something that might have been never done before, blew a 9+ point lead inside of a minute.
Yep.
I saw the stat today on ESPN. Since 1998, when they started tracking this stuff, a team down like Indiana in the last minute was 0-1,414. That's what happened last night.
Yeah.
It was historic. It was a historic choke job, a historic comeback. Everything about last night was historic.
And Indiana's had 3 last-minute comebacks of more than 5 points in just this playoff run alone.
And just the things that happened, that kooky 2-pointer that Halliburton threw up at the end that bounced off the back of the rim and then went in the hoop. And then the other part of it, that Halliburton thought it was the game-winning 3 and did the choke sign toward the Knicks and the New York crowd. Then he found out, it's a 2. We got to keep playing. By the way, the fact the Pacers won in overtime saved Halliburton from a ton of criticism.
Oh yeah, that would have been a hard thing to walk back.
And look, I get the moment, but I'm not big on the choke sign anyway. Just go celebrate with your team, man. I know Reggie Miller did it to Spike Lee and all that stuff.
Reggie
but
was sitting right there.
Yeah, go celebrate with your team. But Halliburton, that shot was crazy. And Aaron Nesmith had the greatest fourth quarter maybe in the history of playoff basketball.
Well, really, like the greatest 5 minutes.
Yeah, it really was like 5 minutes.
Because
he hit all of them in the last 5 minutes, right?
Or 6 of his 8, I think, were in that last 5 minutes of the game.
Yeah, Nesmith was 8 of 9 from 3. Nesmith was 8 of 9 from 3. Well, they played at Vandy. I think he's a South Carolina kid.
South Carolina guy.
And by the way, it's not a fluke. The last 2 years, he shot over 40% from three. So Nesmith is a legit three-point shooter.
Great players step up at good times.
And the Knicks did all they could, missing free throws, turnovers.
Bricking threes.
Yeah. Rick Carlisle won some challenges. We'll get you a little Tyrese Halliburton here on the show because Halliburton talked post-game. But, yeah, that was something last night. All right, let's get a Firehouse Sub text the hour next, 803-404-6100 here on the Halftime Show on the Game. See what's going on. The old Firehouse Sub text line at 803-404-6100. What you got there, man?
In reference to your comment about Rex Ryan and bikini, David said, I'm sending you Terry a therapist bill for that horrific image. Nobody needed that, Terry.
Sorry, Ryan. I apologize. Just had my Jeff Lurie moment. It just kind of hit me.
Yeah, you got to understand the context and the people you're around. I don't think we needed that mental image in our heads.
Yeah, a lot of people's heads are burning right now thinking about that.
Yeah. You know, Rex Ryan, with his love for feet, he's got to love being around a pool, right?
Oh.
Nobody's got shoes on.
Well, wouldn't you wear, if you saw Rex Ryan come in, wouldn't you put your shoes on?
I put an extra pair of shoes on.
Exactly.
I double up on everything.
Yeah. Rex in New York was a thing. And the stuff he would say at pressers, and that's why the New York media didn't really criticize him heavy.
Sure, because he gave him gold.
Yeah. And that happens a lot, is when you have a guy who's a great, I shouldn't say a lot, but it does happen. There are circumstances of coaches who give the media gold. The media will protect for as long as humanly possible.
Sure, because it's content.
Because he's making their jobs easier.
Yeah.
Because, again, look, I'm not going to say, being a beat writer is like digging ditches or tarring roofs or anything like that. But you constantly have to have content every day. And when you have a coach/manager that gives you content every day because he just says whatever, you love that guy. I mean, I guarantee you every media that covered Mike Leach was like, please, God, don't leave.
Yeah.
We love you.
Because you could have lobbed him a question about anything, and you're going to get something.
It's gold. It's gold. So, yeah, Rex, that guy never wore a bikini to one of those pressers, though. So if you are listening and that image has now been burned in your mind to the point of that you can't really function, or maybe you got queasy.
Yeah.
You can't eat your lunch.
You can send your complaints to Cumulus Media.
Exactly.
Reference Terry Ford.
You can send it to program director at 107.5 The Game. That guy will talk to you. Guy will deal with you. I always like when people complain about me to me. They don't know it's me.
The email.
Yeah. That's always good. Anyway, all right. We appreciate the text, 803-404-6100. And back to the conversation, about Coach Mainieri coming back for a second year and the money part of this because of rev share coming and how temporarily there's going to be a collective warehouse until, the courts throw that out because what's it going to do, Tyler?
Violate antitrust.
But this is a thing now. And here at South Carolina, what makes this complicated, not only do you want football to be great because football drives the bus in college athletics in general, but you want your men's basketball program to be competitive, to go to sniff around NCAA tournaments and be successful because that's the second biggest revenue generating sport is men's college basketball. But you have two other sports that either A, are not revenue generators traditionally, or don't generate anything near what men's basketball or football do in baseball and women's basketball. But here's the rub. Baseball has a long, rich tradition of being successful on a national level.
Yep.
That you do not want to lose. And last time I checked, give me the name of the women's college basketball program that for the last 4 or 5 years has been better than South Carolina.
None.
List over? You done?
Yeah.
So you're dealing with that as well. So you've got to figure out financially not only how you make your football program one of the best in the SEC, you make your men's basketball program much more competitive in the SEC, but also you got to get your baseball program back to being what it used to be because that's what your fans want, and you can't let your women's basketball program slip. Because, by the way, you got a high-profile coach.
Good luck, Mr. Donati.
Have fun there, Jeremiah. Good times. All right, we appreciate the text like always on the Firehouse Sub text line 803-404-6100. A lot of football coming up. Halftime show. Time to talk football, nothing but football, and football in the 1 o'clock hour. Sponsored by Atlantic Windows and Doors. CBS Sports is putting out their list of the top coaches in the country. It started 68, was it?
Well, no, the portion that got released yesterday was 68. They're doing all of them. So there's now, I think, 136 FBS teams. So they're essentially ranking 1 through 136 in pieces. 1 through 25 came out today, but yesterday it was 26 through 68. Yeah,
but you're wondering, gee, Tara, where's Shane Beamer? Well, he is sitting at number 28 in the country, according to CBS. Just ahead of him is P.J. Fleck at Minnesota, who has, he's been doing it longer and has had he's had a couple really good seasons.
Yep.
P.J. Fleck.
Still dresses like he's in a barbershop quartet, but that's besides the point.
He kind of looks like he should be in a barbershop quartet. I wonder how much that row the boat starts to get old if you've been playing for me. Preston does a great job of telling like Lou Holtz stories. Like when you're a freshman, all Lou Holtz stuff is so cool and fresh and new. By the time you're a senior, you're rolling your eyes when you've heard the same story like 30 times.
Okay, here we go again.
Another one right ahead of Shane is Coach Sataki at BYU, Kalani Sataki, and that's the end of the list for right now. Shane is ahead of Bill Belichick.
As he should be.
Yes, absolutely.
How many games has Bill Belichick coached in college?
As many as you and myself and Ed Bird combined.
And he's yet a top 10 paid coach and shouldn't be anywhere towards the top of this list.
Yeah, and so as it rolls out, but and I counted really quick, Shane's ahead of 7 SEC coaches, so he's firmly right in the middle of the pack.
Yep.
So
that sounds about right.
It makes sense when you see already, Kirby has a success he's had, Sarks has a success he has had. I mean, we look,
DeBoer was successful.
DeBoer got to a national championship game.
Yep.
We see
Brian Kelly.
Yeah, Brian Kelly has played for the national championship and has been in the college football playoff. Lane Kiffin has had multiple double-digit win seasons at Ole Miss. So you see if those guys are ready to head of Shane at this point. Sure. All right, so behind Shane, though, Mike Elko at Texas A&M at 29. I get that, absolutely. Also, Mark Stoops at Kentucky, totally agree. I shouldn't say I think Mark Stoops has been overrated for a long time.
Yep.
And this is no offense to Stoops. It's just he's had a 10-win season, but Mark Stoops, and again, he fell into the golden ticket. We talk about this all the time. Dude, he pulled the lottery ticket when it comes to being a college football coach. He landed at the ultimate basketball school where all they care about, hey, dude, keep us interested till Midnight Madness and get to a bowl game. We don't care what kind of bowl game it is to say we went to a bowl game.
Just somewhere in Florida.
And besides that, have at it. We don't care. But Stoops last year, that thing was it was ugly last year. And so Stoops is sitting at number 36 behind Shane. So that's 2. Then as you continue to scroll, you get Billy Napier at Florida at 45. I think that's fair. Yeah, Napier last season saved his job. Good for him.
Yep.
But his time at Florida has been very underwhelming. And Shane's time at South Carolina has been better. Let's just be honest. So, I mean, Napier was great previously, but at Florida, it's been very underwhelming. Hugh Freeze of Auburn at 47. I got to push my thoughts on Hugh Freeze, the human being, out of the way for a minute. I think this one's, I would have Hugh Freeze ahead of Billy Napier because Hugh Freeze had success at Ole Miss.
He did.
So he had success in the SEC. And then he went to Liberty and had a lot of success. So I don't know how much of this ranking is also because it's Hugh Freeze. But I think that's a little bit. I would have Hugh Freeze probably ahead of Billy Napier.
Yeah, I think that's fair.
And maybe even Mike Elko, to be fair, because Elko had that good year at Duke.
Yeah.
So, I mean, I just think Freeze, and because of the probation stuff and things of that nature, I think Freeze gets knocked a little bit.
And his return to the SEC hasn't
been good.
Hasn't been great. Those kind of the tricks that he was doing 10 years ago, everybody's caught up to those now.
Yeah.
So kind of the jury's still out on what he's going to be at Auburn. And, this is kind of a panel. So this is CBS Sports and writers at 24/7 as well that are kind of converging on this. And you see for each coach, there's a high and a low. So, one person at the highest rank somebody had them was this, and the lowest rank somebody had them with this. And some of these are ranged, pretty far.
Oh, yeah.
Like Stoops, his high range is 24 and his low range is, 58, which kind of shows you the huge difference in opinion on somebody like Kim Freeze, as high as 32 and as low as 55.
That's a pretty high range.
Again, a pretty big gap.
And if we go back
there
to
with those
Shane
kind
on
of
that,
things.
real quick.
His is 18 and 38, I believe.
So, I mean, that's not as crazy as some of these other ones. Okay, that's 4 SEC coaches behind Shane when you get to Hugh Freeze. And there's a couple more. Because then, and I agree with this, Brent Venables at 52.
So far.
1 good season and 2 very seasons in Oklahoma.
You want to talk about a make or break year? This is it.
Yeah, and I think that's fair, don't you? I mean,
Yeah, I do too.
look, we can't forget something. This is bleeping Oklahoma, man.
Yeah, they are not used to losing.
No, and they won't put up with it. They had that really weird John Blake, Howard Schnellenberger speed bump. But besides that, this is a program for 50 years. They win.
What it was the stat? The most winning program since World War II?
Yes. There's 2 programs that all they've done is win for 70 years. Oklahoma, Ohio State.
Yep. And one of them at top of the game right now, and the other one not so much.
Right. And the ironic part is Oklahoma finally gets in the SEC with Texas, and Texas is looked at as a better program, and Oklahoma's been the better program than Texas forever.
Because Texas came in with more success in recent years.
So it's crazy. All right, so you move on after Brent Venables, Clark Lee at Vanderbilt, which again it's fair. Look, I don't know how good of a coach Clark Lee is. I really don't. I've got no idea how good of a coach Clark Lee is or isn't. I know that he's had a couple of years at Vanderbilt where they surprised folks and they won more games than anybody thought they would win. But it's Vanderbilt. It's so tough to win there. Right now, it's very tough to win at Vandy.
Yep.
And so I don't know what to make. I really don't know what to make of Clark Lee.
I think last year did a lot for him, you know, because, again, Vanderbilt's kind of one of those programs like, all right, you hire a coach, he's going to not have much success, and you fire him after 5-6 years. Like, I think he bought himself some staying time with what they did last year, upsetting Alabama, you know, the Pavia phenomenon and all that kind of stuff. Like, and he's an alum too, so that helps. But he's not going to go anywhere in Nashville for a while.
No, he's not, because who are you going to go get that's better? That's the other. The way you are right now as a program, who are you going to get that's better?
Yeah, and it's funny because Vanderbilt obviously has a very rich alumni base. They are the Harvard of the South. A lot of smart people, a lot of rich people that have come through that school. And it seems like only in the past year was he finally to kick some people in the pants, say, hey, we need some money to make this thing better.
You think about it for a minute. How rich the alums of Vanderbilt are. If Vanderbilt decided one day to have a big meeting and shoot, like, smoke out of the thing like the Vatican,
Yeah.
and come back out and say, we now are going to take sports massively serious. We need a lot of money from our alum. They got it.
Yeah, you would think.
They've got I mean, Mark Cuban his kid goes there.
Yep.
I think Mark Cuban's got a few bucks. Mark Cuban could scratch you checks like nobody's business. And there's a lot of other very, very well-heeled alumni from Vanderbilt.
I'm sure the Vanderbilt family would still, whatever iteration that is of them now, would probably contribute.
I would think. There's a lot of rich people around Vanderbilt. It's just the idea that Vanderbilt looks at it like, oh, God, it's athletics. Yawn. Because they care about academics first. Hey, ready? How kooky is that? A university that cares about academics more than athletics. What's wrong with those people?
And one in the SEC, no less.
Exactly. By the way, Clark Lee is one step ahead of Bill Belichick at 54. As you continue to move through the SEC, this hurts my heart because I love this guy. Sam Pittman at Arkansas is 57th. Arkansas had that one good year in Sam's second season where they won 9 games, destroyed and dismembered Texas.
Mm-hmm.
And besides that, not so much, man.
Yeah.
Just saying, not so much. So as much as I love Sam Pittman, to be objective, I get where Sam's sitting. I do. I get it.
And again, he did enough to get himself from being fired last year. Because remember, 2 years ago, we were surprised after the 23 season, like, oh, they're bringing him back for another year? Okay. And again, he did enough. Yeah. But we kind of thought, okay, he's probably a dead man walking. But he's kicked the can down the road for now.
And the last rated Power 4 coach, because this is the Power 4 coaches. The last rated Power 4 coach is Jeff Lebby at Mississippi State.
I get it.
Yeah, so do I. 1 year, and they were terrible. They're rebuilding. They're coming out of a bad patch here because of the passing of Mike Leach.
And look, Lebby knew that this was going to take a while, and first time as a head coach, he'd been there previously as the OC. Like, this is going to take some time, and fortunately for him, outside of those couple years with Dan Mullen, Mississippi State's not had a prolonged history of a lot of success in football, so I think they can be patient with him.
Yeah, and they should be. Give him a chance to build it. He's got a huge resume as an offensive coordinator and offensive mind. So I get it. I do. I just think you need to give him at least 3 years to see where you're at.
Sure.
And then at the end of 3 years with Lebby, then you take a step back and go, is the program in a forward? Is it, the trajectory, is it forward? If we feel like he's heading in the right direction, all right, man, keep going.
Yep.
But you get to year 3 and it's just spinning its wheels, you got to figure out what you're going to do from there. But you're right. I mean, Dan Mullen got them to number 1 with some guy named Dak Prescott as a starting quarterback. Obviously, Mike Leach had them with winning. They had winning records, and really Leach. Here's the sad part for Mississippi State. Leach was just getting his footing.
Mm-hmm.
Just getting his footing. And, Zach Arnett, yeah, it was a disaster as a head coach because he was young and wasn't ready. It was forced on him. But a heck of a defensive coordinator. And obviously Leach, an offensive mastermind, they were just starting to bubble in Starkville. I'm not saying little. I don't think you ever win a national title with Mike Leach. There's a good guess you'll get to a college football playoff, maybe not with Mike Leach. But you were going to have a winning record every year with Mike Leach. And you were going to win a game or two you shouldn't have won, probably lose a game you shouldn't have lost. And at the end of the day, he's going to give you between 7 and 10 wins, and you're going to have a hell of a lot of fun.
Yeah, he's going to keep you entertained the entire time. Your quarterback's going to manage to throw for 600 yards in at least one game. It's going to be wild.
And you're going to, even the losses, you might lose 54 to 53.
And Mississippi State was the perfect place for it. Like, because again, not a place that didn't have a ton of success. Like, if you wanted to experiment in the SEC, that was the place to do it.
So, and it's a shame what happened because, again, I really think the best of Mike Leach at Mississippi State was ready to go.
Yeah.
And when he unfortunately passed away. So that's a list from CBS Sports of the top coaches in the Power Four. They got to us. They would then put their top 25 out. Okay, who's number 1? Is it Kirby?
It's definitely Kirby.
I don't think it's an argument.
No.
That'd be Kirby.
Hey, Kirby, Dabo, Ryan Day. There's your top 3.
Yeah, I mean, again, Day's got a championship.
There's only 3 coaches with championships right now. It's those 3.
And then you got Kirby with 2. I think Kirby will be number 1. Absolutely. It's going to be interesting. Are they going to put Ryan Day at number 2 with recency bias after, a guy that was his job was on the line, so to speak? Does he become number 2? His record, his winning percentage is vile, by the way.
Yeah, it's insane, which is also so funny. We were talking about, hey, might not be back in Columbus next year if you can't manage to beat Michigan. But no, I think Dabo's your number 2.
I mean, and again, Clemson's being looked at as a top 5 team in the country this year. They're in the playoff last year.
Took a step back forward last year. So
it'll be fun. Is this coming out? Are they dropping it tomorrow? The rest of it?
It's actually out now.
Do you have it?
I do have it.
Well, we'll get to 1 to 25 next. Tyler Head will unveil the rest of CBSSports.com's rankings for the coaches in the Power 4 leagues. We'll do that next here on the Halftime Show. Ed Bird, Terry Ford, Tyler Head. We go to 3 on the game. Okay. We do football, and more football, and lots of football, and we throw in some football in the 1 o'clock hour, sponsored by Atlantic Windows and Doors. Terry Ford, Tyler Head, Ed Bird here, steering the ship for Dave this afternoon. Okay, we gave you 68 to 26.
Yep.
Power 4 coaches rated by CBS Sports, their college football folks, and it was 24/7, wasn't it?
Yeah, it was like a collaboration.
All right, and Shane was sitting at 28, correct?
Yes.
Ahead of, what did we say, 7, 8? I think it's 8
Yeah,
SEC
right in the
coaches.
middle.
So Shane was right in the middle. All right, now let's go from, and I don't have this, so I'm going to let you do it. I want to be surprised. I purposely didn't look it up. So let's start with where are we at, 25. Hit it.
Okay. Oh, I got to scroll to the bottom of the list here. 25 is, you want to take a guess at who you think it is?
SEC coach?
No.
No, Kalen DeBoer is going to be much higher on the list. Whew. How about our boy at Georgia Tech?
No. So, Brent Key was right behind. He was 30. He was behind.
Okay, I didn't see him.
Beamer.
I didn't see him on the list.
But you're in the right conference.
In the ACC, geez. No, Norvell?
Mike Norvell is number
Norvell, 25.
25.
I mean, last year was bad.
It was bad.
It was bad.
Yeah.
Last year was bad. So, Norvell, 25, okay.
And again, this isn't all off of one season. They did have what should have been a playoff team the year prior.
Well, I mean, Norvell, they should have been in the playoffs the year before, and then the year before that, they won double-digit games.
Yep. So, again, last year was disastrous. There's no two ways about that. And
where do you think he? Okay, let's say we did this list after 2023. Norvell top 15, top 10.
So last year he was actually 8.
Okay,
yeah, last year because they have last year's ranking too.
Okay,
he was 8 on that list.
All right. So who's 24?
24. You want to take a guess at that as well? You just want me to tell you?
Yeah, just tell me.
Eli Drinkwitz.
Okay, he's had 2 good seasons in a row. Won double-digit games.
Yep.
Okay, I get it. I get Drinkwitz at 24.
Our new biggest rival, Brett Bielema, is 23.
You know, Bielema was good at Wisconsin, but he was god-awful at Arkansas.
Yep.
And he's been good at Illinois. The Big Ten's his wheelhouse.
And it's funny, and we talked about this leading up to the Citrus Bowl last year, is like when you look at the comparison record-wise, him and Beamer were almost identical through the past couple of years. And that, again, playing for a 10th win last year was significant to both programs. Obviously, Bielema got the better of him and got the 10th win, but those guys are like neck and neck in these past 4 years.
And look, just with the Illinois and South Carolina years, you could say Beamer should be closer to Bielema because of the way, like you said, it's so weird. But Bielema, we forget Bielema, he had some good seasons at Wisconsin, double-digit win seasons at Wisconsin. That's why it was so shocking that they soiled themselves so bad at Arkansas.
Yeah.
But you can't play Wisconsin football in the SEC.
Nah.
What else you got?
Let's see. 22, Rhett Lashley. 21, Kurt Signetti.
Lashley at 22, that's interesting. I mean, again, he's done well at SMU since he took the gig from Dykes.
Mm-hmm.
And there was but it was their first year in the ACC. Well, okay, go ahead. All right. I'm not gonna go at that one too hard. Go ahead.
Again, Signetti at 21, Cristobal at 20, Ferentz at 19, Dillingham at 18. He was 64 last year.
That's a little. See, I get you got the college football playoff. But let's see what you do moving forward.
Yeah, and look, I like Kenny Dillingham a lot, and I think, and again, he has that agreement in his contract, like, hey, you better be spending up to the max potential if you want me to hang around here.
That alone should move him up on the list,
which
right?
is genius, by the way.
It was genius.
There's a lot of hope and optimism that they're going to be a regular threat for the Big 12 title and obviously making the college football playoff. But again, we've just kind of seen that one really good season so far. There are guys
behind him on this list have a much better resume than Dillingham. Everybody's going off of the trip to the college football playoff, which is great.
Yep.
But let's see him build upon it. That's just me.
Jeff Brom at 17, Heupel at 16, Leipold at 15. Kansas kind of took a step back last year.
Yeah, what was he last year on that list?
12.
See, I think Lance Leipold's a fantastic football coach, and it's very difficult to win at Kansas. I might have him a little bit back a little bit, not much because he's really a good coach. But yeah, they were one of the most underachieving programs in America last year.
Yeah, and Jalen Daniels was hurt for a lot of last season. That didn't help.
That didn't help him either. But even when he was in the lineup, they had some troubles. All right, what else you got?
14, staying in Kansas, Chris Kleiman.
He's another really good one, man.
Yeah, and maybe it's just being in the state of Kansas, but it just feels like they both fly under the radar.
Oh, they absolutely do, especially Kleiman, because, again, Leipold is a little bit more, has got more of a personality to himself than Kleiman, but Kleiman is so good. I mean, right now, if you look at those two programs, Kansas State is a couple steps ahead of Kansas now because of what happened last year to the Jayhawks. But Kleiman's excellent.
Yeah. Lincoln Riley at 13.
Yeah, I think
the Oklahoma stuff's doing a lot of heavy lifting there.
Yeah, absolutely. But here's my question, and I've said this before. And this is no offense to Lincoln Riley because you still have to do it. But, dude, you were handed a Mercedes at Oklahoma.
Yep.
What Bob Stoops handed you at Oklahoma was a finely tuned revving engine sports car that was driving on the Autobahn in the fast lane. You were given Southern Cal to build a program, and you had one good year with another guy's players and your quarterback from Oklahoma, but since then, I think that's a little high.
There is a debate as to, because a common thought of why Lincoln Riley left Oklahoma was he didn't want them to join the SEC, or he didn't want to be there when they joined the SEC because he didn't
like beating up on the Big 12.
Yeah, like beating up in the Big 12. It's debatable. Did he know that Southern Cal was going to go to the Big 10 when he took the job? Because again, they knocked him around a lot last year.
I think that's a great question because my first thought is no.
Because why would you sign up for that if you didn't want to go to the SEC?
Exactly. What are you doing? And two, I think that kind of conversation, I think that really started gaining some momentum once the whole Pac-12 TV deal fell apart.
Yeah.
Then I think Southern Cal did not want to leave the Pac-12.
No.
They just had no choice.
And the Pac-12 didn't want him to leave. But
you got to do what's best for you.
Yeah, the ship was sinking.
When they're paying you $10 an hour on your TV deal, time to go.
And you're going to be streaming on Facebook Live.
Twitch. What do you got there after Lincoln Riley, who I think that's a little bit high for Lincoln?
Lane Kiffin at 12, Whittingham at Utah at 11, Matt Campbell at 10, Kalen DeBoer at 9, Brian Kelly at 8, James Franklin at 7, Marcus Freeman at 6. And then your top 5. You want to guess the top 5 in order?
Kirby.
Yeah, okay.
Dabo or Kelly. Which one's 2? Or is it neither?
Kelly?
Not Kelly. I mean,
Ryan Day.
Day, I mean.
Okay.
All right, so I've got in some order. It's going to be Kirby, Dabo, and Day in the top 3. Am I right?
That's correct.
Who's it 2?
Ryan Day, actually.
Yeah, recency.
I would have put Dabo over him just for a longer
Dabo's winning percentage is stupid, too.
It's insane.
4. Kalen DeBoer?
He was 9.
Okay. All right, yeah, he was. So who's 4?
Steve Sarkisian.
That's fair. What he's done. Look, I'm a believer. These last 2 years, I was wrong. I've got no problem saying I was wrong.
As we've said with many coaches, do it multiple years in a row. And to do that, was their schedule the toughest? It wasn't. But still, to play for the SEC championship and be the furthest team in the SEC in the playoff, and if you don't fumble on the goal line, who knows what happens?
Yep.
You're tip of the cap. You have made it.
I will stand up and say I was wrong. Who's a 5?
Dan Lanning.
I'm going to say this. All right, let's go back to between 5 and 10 real quick. First of all, there in no world, and I like Matt Campbell. In no world is Matt Campbell ahead of Kyle Whittingham. That's garbage. Kyle Whittingham is one of the most underrated coaches in America. I know they were underwhelming last year at Utah because our boy at quarterback continually getting hurt.
Well, he finally retired.
Yeah, he finally gave up. Cam Rising finally just said, I can't do this anymore.
A 12th year of eligibility. Right. Nah, I'm good.
I'm in my 20s. I have the body of a 70-year-old. Kyle Whittingham is a phenomenal football coach. He should be ahead of Dan Lanning. He should be ahead of Marcus Freeman. This recency thing, Dan Lanning's done nothing. Yeah, you got the college football playoff. I get you. And, yeah, you're a great recruiter, and your teams have had good records. But you were number 1 team in America, and you got dog-walked.
Yeah.
You got destroyed. And Freeman, yeah, you got to the championship game, and I give you props for that. But Kyle Whittingham's been really good for a long time. How many college football playoff trips would Kyle Whittingham made if this thing was 12 teams?
Yeah, probably would have been there pretty regularly.
So I think I sound like my last name's Winningham, don't I?
A little bit.
I'm really up on the soapbox on
you
Kyle.
related at all?
I love me some Kyle Winningham. He needs a restraining order. It's like Dave with Clark and Poe all of a sudden. I just think Kyle Winningham is.
Yeah, no, very good. And you don't stay at a place for 20 years.
He's so good
without having success.
I mean, I remember when Southern Cal, Lincoln Riley's first year, had a chance to go to the college football playoff, and Utah cuffed them around in the Big 12 the Pac-12 championship game.
Destroyed them. That's when Caleb Williams was crying coming off the field.
Beat the taste out of their mouth. So I think Winningham is very underrated there in that spiel. And if my memory is correct, which it's not anymore, that Utah team that punched Alabama in the face in the Sugar Bowl?
Yep, that was
coached
also
by Kyle Winningham.
Kyle Winningham, yep.
He's a really good coach, man. I'll take Kyle Winningham over Lanning or Freeman or any of those guys. All right, we'll get to some football stuff in the NFL, passing from an owner next on the Halftime Show. All right, we are rolling nothing but football in the 1 o'clock hour, sponsored by Atlantic Windows and Doors. Terry Ford, Tyler Head, Ed Bird, man in the ship. All right, we are going to, between now and 3 o'clock, give away tickets to go see Styx. Yes, Styx. Yes, they're still going. It Styx. No Dennis DeYoung. I think he's long gone, but the rest of the crew pretty much, for the most part. I think Tommy Shaw is still there and a couple of the others from the original band. We'll be doing a text-to-win contest. That's coming up in the 2 o'clock hour for Styx. So we'll give away 5 pair on the text line, Ed Bird. So you don't have to touch it. Jeannie, the promotions director, will handle that. She's the goddess of the text-to-win. So you're safe. We'll be doing that, I said, again, the 2 o'clock hour. And also tickets to the Fireflies for next week. We'll be giving those away. That's between 1:30 and 2. Your chance to grab tickets for the Fireflies. That's coming up as well. All right, NFL news real quick as we talk nothing but football in the 1 o'clock hour, sponsored by Atlantic Windows and Doors. Indianapolis Colt owner Jimmy Irsay passed away at the age of 65 yesterday. Here is our buddy from ESPN, Scott Van Pelt, talking about the passing of Jimmy Irsay last night.
Indianapolis Colts owner Jim Irsay, who has led the team since 1997 and presided over one of the franchise's greatest eras, died Wednesday at 65. In an era where NFL owners are increasingly involved in numerous other industries, Irsay, who took over at the age of 37, succeeding his father Bob, who had passed away, becoming the youngest owner at the time, was an NFL lifer whose team was his most important asset. Under Irsay's watch, the Colts advanced to 2 Super Bowls. They won in Super Bowl in 2006. Peyton Manning, who won a Super Bowl with Irsay and the Colts, released a statement Wednesday night which read, "I am heartbroken to hear about Irsay's passing. He was an incredibly generous and passionate owner. I will always be indebted to him for giving me my start in the NFL. His love for the Colts and the city of Indy was unmatched. His impact on the players who played for him will not be forgotten. My thoughts and prayers are with his family and everyone in the Colts community. He will be missed. Jim, rest in peace, my friend." Signed number 18. Jim Irsay, who lived quite a life and squeezed quite a lot in his 65 years, is gone.
Yeah, Jim Irsay and Irsay, the Colts understand the mess that the Colts were under the ownership of his father, Bob. Bob Irsay was one of the worst owners in the history of the NFL. I know, I watched it as a little kid, and listening to the older people scream and yell about how bad of an owner Bob Irsay was with the Baltimore Colts. Moved the team to Indianapolis. They say Art Modell can't go back to Cleveland for fear of death. Bob Irsay could never walk into the city of Baltimore for fear of death.
Yeah, I'm sure.
So going from one of the worst owners ever, and then whenever the family takes over, it's always like this. Well, it's the family. He'll just be like his old man.
Yeah, right.
But to be fair, Jimmy Irsay wasn't. Jimmy Irsay, he was a kook at times, did some things, played guitar,
off the field antics,
had some off the field stuff, good and bad.
Yeah.
He did a lot of fun stuff on social media I didn't know about, so I read about this recently. He would go on like social media and do trivia contests with Colts fans. If you won, you get tickets to Colt games. Jimmy Irsay was not your normal owner. And there was some really good in that. He kind of had because he was so young when he took the team.
Sure.
At 37, Scott Van Pelt just said he was the youngest owner in the NFL when he took over for his dad. And so Irsay wasn't, he was just kind of a younger guy, kind of like, and he, was, every now and then he was like kind of be a maverick. And I didn't get a chance to really deep dive in the article, talk about he was one of the first guys to break away from Daniel Snyder because Snyder, had so much power despite the fact he was another one of the worst owners in the history of the NFL. He might even be worse than Bob Irsay.
Yep.
That's saying something. And Jimmy was one of the first to kind of go, you know what? I'm kind of, I don't know if I really want you around.
Yeah.
So Jimmy Irsay, the Colts were successful for a long period of time. Not so much since Andrew Luck obviously got hurt. So Irsay was successful as an owner. He was, again, the people in Indianapolis really, really, really liked him. Did he have some demons? Absolutely he did. But Irsay overall, you would say that was a positive time for the Indianapolis Colts for a long period under Jimmy Irsay.
Well, and I don't believe he was a meddling type of owner either. He's somebody that allowed the people that he hired to do what they needed to do.
Yeah, because look, I think every now and then he would voice his thoughts or opinion, but he wasn't a meddler.
Yeah, he's not somebody that standing over your shoulder and,
Right.
hey, don't do this, do that type of thing.
He wasn't saying, draft Johnny Manziel because a homeless man told me to, like Truck Stop Jimmy in Cleveland. Jimmy Irsay let his people, for the most part, do what they needed to do. And he would say stuff every now and then when people roll their eyes and go, oh, my God, what were you saying? But I think Jimmy Irsay, from where the Colts were when he took ownership of the franchise from his father, when his father passed, to what they end up accomplishing, you've got to give Jimmy Irsay a lot of credit.
Yep.
Because his dad was, I won't go, I'm going to say things we have to hit the dump button. But just an awful owner, and to be honest, everything I heard from people who were around it, an awful human being.
Yeah.
And Jimmy Irsay, we'll say this, was not an awful human being.
Right.
A lot of people really loved being around Jimmy Irsay. He was a lot different from the old man. So Jimmy Irsay did a lot of good work with that franchise from where he took it, and some of the good things he did in the community in Indianapolis, and also just it seemed like he was a very fan-friendly owner in how he interacted with the fans as well. So, and again, he had some health issues here at the end, brought on some of those demons that he had
Right.
as an owner, but was a good owner overall, I think, and put the Colt franchise in a good spot for a lot of years.
Yeah.
So, Jimmy Irsay passing away at the age of 65. Firehouse Sub text of the hour, 803-404-6100. We'll have that next here on the Halftime Show on The Game. Time for our Firehouse Sub text, the hour, 803-404-6100. What do you got there, Tyler?
Right up, I turned the microphone on. Going back to our coach rankings, Nameless Texter says Elijah Campbell's a better college coach than Bill Belichick. Well, Elijah Campbell's called one more play than he has.
Whoever that texter is, phenomenal. Phenomenal text. It's so true.
Elijah Campbell has more college football coaching experience than Bill Belichick right now.
Think about that for a minute. Elijah Campbell's been more successful.
He has been. That play went for, 30 yards?
Yeah, it's like 29 yards or whatever it was. For a while, it was the biggest play in the spring game.
It was. I thought it was going to be the biggest play in the spring game.
And ended up being the second biggest play in the spring game.
What's have the 51-yarder to
Yeah, the bomb
somebody?
to Dre Jacobs.
Yeah.
Yeah.
So for a while, though.
From Cutter Woods. Yeah, but getting near the end of the half, the Elijah Campbell play was the longest play from scrimmage.
Yep.
Has Bill Belichick done that?
No.
No.
No, Bill Belichick just had girlfriend, fiance, whatever she is now, drama.
Mm-hmm. So really, Elijah should be 53. If Bill was 54, Elijah should be 53.
I think so.
Coach Campbell.
We'll write him in.
Coach Campbell, baby. Absolutely. Oh, we always appreciate 803-404-6100. Hey, going back to that list real quick. Yeah, I love the recency thing. I get it. I do. But it also, like with Marcus Freeman, I mean, he did a heck of a job last year. No one's taken away from what he did. But that was 1 year. Mm-hmm. And that was it. I mean, it was 1 year of excellence. There's no guarantee there's going to be more years of excellence. See, look, and Dan Lanning has had, multiple double-digit win seasons at Oregon, just couldn't get past UW 2 years ago.
Yep.
When Washington played for the championship. And then last year, you were number one most of the year and made the college football playoff. But then you got skunked.
They have steadily taken steps forward. Again, like you said, 2 years ago, couldn't beat Washington in those two games. This past year, obviously, went undefeated, won the Big Ten championship, and got smoked by Ohio State. So they're taking steps in the right direction. And I think when you look at this list, and we'll probably do a hard cutoff at probably number 9 here, I think to be in the top 9, because, again, like you said, Matt Campbell, good coach, he's not going to win a national championship. No. I think when you look at 1 through 9, these are all teams that you can say are probably capable of winning a national championship. Could Ole Miss make it happen? Maybe. I don't think you have the highest hope in them. But like Utah, Southern Cal, Kansas State, Kansas, Tennessee, like none of these programs people look at and say, yeah, that team could definitely win the national championship this year. Like, again, I feel like Oregon's in one of those situations where what the resources that they have, the success they've had so far, they could win a national championship, and it would be very believable. So I think that also factors in as to why you have the certain names in that top 9.
And that's what we think because, again, Lanning has a little bit more of a resume than Freeman of success in the regular season.
Yeah.
And I guess the recency of, and you might be right, where they're set up moving forward, what we think they're going to do this year. But that's it, we think. That's all we can do is think. And when you make these lists, all you're doing is presuming.
We're in the think system.
Yes, we're in talking season. Yeah. Absolutely. So I understand that to a point. I do. Just like for an example. Look, I always bring up Brian Kelly because I also think there's this aspect of if we did a list of coaches you don't want to have a beer with, Brian Kelly will be in the top 5.
Yeah, that probably wouldn't be very fun.
No, Brian Kelly looks like a dude who, first of all, you don't want to be talking to because it seems like he's just not the greatest personality. Then he tries to make a joke, and you're like, don't do that again.
Brian Kelly is the guy when you're in the process of drinking the beer is going to tell you how much your beer sucks and how bad all the things in it for you while he builds up his own.
Or this, ready? Well, this reminds me when I went this trip to, and then he goes this, well, that's nothing. Let me tell you about he's that, well, that's nothing guy.
Yeah, and then he's like, hey, can you climb up on that scaffolding for me?
Yeah,
and you say no and walk away.
Yes, absolutely. And we conveniently forget about that.
It's crazy to me how that just kind of gets swept under the rug. I feel like that should be a bigger deal than it is.
Well, it should have been. And the thing with Kelly, I just think he comes off very unlikable. And I think that affects how people look at him as a coach.
I mean, he's still a good coach.
He's a really good coach.
You don't have the success that he's had without being one, but like when you step outside the white lines of the football stadium or a football field, it's like, yeah, I can do without you.
And I really think that hurts him. Like, the example, he's been to the college football playoff once and played for a national championship another time.
Yep.
And Dan Lanning hasn't done that. But we put Dan Lanning ahead of Brian Kelly because we have this perception that Kelly is underachieving at LSU because his first year, they won 10 games, went to the SEC championship game.
Yep.
And since then, he's still winning 9 or 10 games, but he hasn't gotten back to the SEC championship game. So our idea is, dude, at LSU, they've won these national championships, and you came to LSU to win a national championship.
Sure.
You firmly almost said without saying, I'm coming to LSU because I can't win a national championship at Notre Dame. Oh, what happened last year? Marcus Freeman almost won a national championship at Notre Dame.
Yeah, which puts more of the pressure on him. Like, hey,
Exactly.
that school, you weren't supposed to be able to do that, especially now in a deeper playoff. Because it's one thing to go, all right, you went undefeated in a controversial schedule. You don't have a championship game, and you made it that way. Like, Marcus Freeman actually had to win a couple games to get to that point.
And to Marcus Freeman and his staff's credit, and the players, they played for the whole deal. So that also probably makes Brian Kelly not look so good. It's like, well, why couldn't you do that, bub?
Yeah. Yep.
What's up? You said you couldn't. That's tough to do there. Well, this cat did it, and he's got better hair than you. So I do think Kelly, the unlikability of Kelly, hurts him in all these rankings. I just think it does. I think some guys, if all resumes are anywhere near in the same neighborhood, I think Kelly gets dinged because people go, ew, Brian Kelly, ew.
Yeah.
Like the joke he made, try to steal the John McKay joke. And
in his mind, he's like, oh, I'm going to make him laugh with this one. Nah.
So
First of all, stealing someone else's joke.
Right. Especially
come up with something
everyone
of your own.
knows the joke and knows the coach and everything.
And you're not going to do it better than he did it.
No, because it was so off the cuff, and it was just the moment was perfect, the timing was perfect, and everything. Why?
Well, and I think if I remember correctly, even in the interview, it wasn't set up correctly.
Right.
He had to add part of it himself.
Yeah. And remember that's when it got all clunky.
Yeah.
With McKay, it was easy. Coach, what do you think of your team's execution? I'm all for it.
Yeah. Boom. Perfect.
Bum. Try the veal. I'll be here all week. All right. We appreciate the texting, like always, from the Firehouse Sub text line. We will come back. What's trending at 2? John Whittle is trending at 2 from the Big Spur. We will talk about that next here on the Halftime Show and his writings on the Big Spur. That's next. All right, so if you want to do some stuff to your home, whether it's new appliances, some new stuff in the bathroom, maybe a new tub you can sit in and chill, new lighting, new fixtures, new plumbing, you go to experts. You go to the folks at the Nest, 1331 Gadsden in the Vista, 803-978-2025. You just call, talk about what you want to do. They will direct you to the expert in that department. Like Graham, the appliance king, the appliance guru. I think Graham builds refrigerators when he's not at the Nest. You call, you'll get Graham. He'll ask you, what your vision is, what you want to do in your kitchen, and then your budget. We'll set an appointment for you to come in. They will walk you through the unbelievable showroom at the Nest with all these different varieties, and then they'll sit down and make it happen for you. It's that simple, that easy. 803-978-2025. Give the folks at the Nest a call, 1331 Gadsden in the Vista. All right, let's do the house cleaning part really quick, because I'll forget, because I always do. Right now, we will take callers number 4 and 5. You'll get a family 4-pack of tickets to go check out the Columbia Fireflies next Saturday against the Fayetteville Woodpeckers. Again, Fireflies, Woodpeckers, next Saturday at Segra. Callers number 4 and 5 at 803-404-6100. We'll get tickets. It's a good time. It's fun. 2 family 4-packs. That is next Saturday. Columbia Fireflies, Fayetteville Woodpeckers.
Sounds good.
You in?
Sure.
Maybe one of those families will take you and the wife.
Yeah, okay. Bring me along with you. It's funny because when you look at minor league baseball schedules, they play like 5-game sets. They'll play the same team for like a week straight.
Oh, yeah.
Because we gave away tickets to like a Wednesday game with them the other day. It's like, that continues on through the
Think
weekend.
about it. Oh, yeah, they play long series. So we'll get that for you right now. Give us a ring, 803-404-6100. And this hour, we'll be doing a text to win for Sticks tickets. So we're going to do that, too.
Cool.
All right, so John Whittle from the Big Spur, who's been on this show a good amount of times and has been on with Jay or Bill or whoever many times. No one has covered Carolina baseball like John Whittle of the Big Spur. Well, John just dropped an article on thebigspur.com. Behind the scenes with South Carolina baseball. I'm going by the tweet John Whittle put out. Behind the scenes of Carolina baseball, failure to develop and practice, trashing TrackMan, players backsliding in productivity, so much more into why the season turned into a historically bad one, not only at SC, but one of the worst in SEC history. Now, you need VIP access to read the article in the Big Spur. But John Whittle at 2:15 will kind of go into a little bit more detail for us on what happened and his article on the Big Spur.
And the trashing TrackMan and just kind of reading the replies to the tweets and the quotes and all that kind of stuff, that's what people are really kind of zeroing in on here is, we talked about this yesterday, the amount of data and analytical breakdowns you have on all facets of the game now, particularly when it comes to pitching, the one area that South Carolina struggled more than anything else with this year. If you're getting rid of that, how much of a contributing factor to the disaster on the mound was that this year?
And I'll say this. We talked about this in opening the show, that I get why you would bring Coach Mainieri back for year 2. We went over it. We said, look, no one's going to make excuses. It was terrible. It was historically a dumpster fire. But that being said, it was year 1 of a new regime. A guy in Coach Mainieri with a magnificent resume, and you give that guy with a magnificent resume a second year to see if he can get this thing back on track. And 2, the financial aspect of this happens at the worst possible time financially.
Yeah.
Because of rev share that's coming probably July 1st is the target for the new, we'll see.
Yeah.
It's up to a judge, but we'll see.
It's coming at some point.
Yeah, and then you're going to throw roughly $14 million at getting rid of a coach and a coaching staff and bring in a new coach and a coaching staff for a sport, revenue-wise, trails football and men's basketball. And as much as I know that this baseball program is loved and revered here, if you're looking at dollars, the revenue generators are football and men's basketball in the country.
Yeah, that doesn't make economical sense.
So with all that being said, in the first hour, I said, look, I understand if I'm Jeremiah Donati looking at all the factors here, giving Paul Mainieri a chance for year 2. I get it. And I said, if I'm looking at all this and I'm sitting in the AD chair, I'd probably do the same thing. But I will say this. We also talked about you got to sit down and have that conversation with Coach Mainieri.
Sure.
Before you make any decisions, if you're Jeremiah Donati, and maybe he's already had the conversations, because Jordan Kay of the State said that sources are saying that Coach Mainieri right now is coming back for year 2. But you got to have a conversation. Part of the conversation is TrackMan. I'm sorry. That's part of what you need to sit down and talk about.
Because what is everybody else using?
Everybody's using advanced analytics, TrackMan. How do you think more college players are getting drafted now than high school players? Because almost every power conference or even group of 5 that are baseball programs with any kind of significance have TrackMan.
Yeah, and I think we talked about this yesterday. It can tell you even the most finite details of anything a pitcher is doing. arm angle, velocity, where your foot is. It's the ultimate resource, which is why it is caught on, why it's so popular, and why it works. Because again, it's giving you a breakdown that the eyes can't give you. And again, what we're going to talk to John Whittle in a few minutes is this. Paul Mainieri's old school mindset of, well, I've looked at pitchers this way for 40,
Rooney, to be fair,
or
the
Rooney
pitching
as well.
coach.
That's also a strong possibility. Is the eye test. I know what I need to see out of a pitcher, and we're going to go off that. I don't need your analytics and computers and all that kind of stuff. And again, when you have the worst DRA in program history, maybe you should reconsider that.
Ready? I've always done it this way.
Well, guess what? It didn't work.
And to me, that's the conversation of, if I know, and I should know if I'm the AD, that TrackMan is obviously not a priority or to be used because we're going with this old school. We see it, we know it, we've done it this way or whatever. I'll be honest with you, just for me, that's a huge problem.
Yeah.
That's a gigantic problem moving forward.
Yeah.
Because if everybody else is using it and you see the results and you're not using it and you don't want to use it, I need a minute, right?
And again, it goes back to what we talked about yesterday, where he, makes the comment of, hey, right after the game on Tuesday, well, Rooney's not going anywhere. We're not making any staff changes. Again, when you've had the worst season in over 30 years, there should be no option off the table in terms of changing or analyzing. So is this well, I don't want to use TrackMan at all? Or is it like, hey, it didn't work this year. You tried your way, bud. It didn't work. Now you better start using it going forward.
So we'll get the information from John about the TrackMan angle of this, because that's a thing. I mean, that is a real thing. If it were me, and I find out about how, and then I sit down and one of my first questions is going to be, TrackMan, have we changed our tune on this? And if I'm Paul Mainieri, and Rooney told me, because I trust Rooney, that. And I'm just going down. I'm making scenarios.
Yep.
If I say to Rooney about TrackMan, hey, everybody's using this, Terry. We don't need no stupid TrackMan. And then this year goes away.
This is the TrackMan right here.
I got your TrackMan right in front of my face, right above my nose. I got two TrackMans. And it goes as poorly as it did. Then do you go back to Rooney and say, so Terry, what about TrackMan? We're going to do it now?
Yeah.
And if I get no and the same answer, I might need to reevaluate what I'm doing with my pitching coach.
Yep.
So we'll get all this information because John knows a heck of a lot more than us. We'll get into that with John Whittle from the Big Spur 215. He just dropped an article on thebigspur.com. Once again, John promoted it on social media with, I just lost it. Here it is. John Whittle says, behind the scenes of South Carolina baseball, failure to develop and practice, trashing TrackMan, players backsliding in productivity. So much more into why the season turned into a historically bad one, not only at SC, but one of the worst in SEC history. So, and again, it's on bigspur.com. So that's what we're going to talk to John about here in just a few minutes, right here on the Halftime Show. 2:15, we'll have John Whittle. All right, also what's trending at 2 was, Ed Bird, get ready to punch some buttons on the old cool audio there. The NBA playoffs last night, Game 1 of the Eastern Conference Finals. I very rarely use this word. I think it's thrown around too much. That was epic.
That was a lot of fun.
I mean, that was craziness. Just craziness last night. The New York Knicks were the best team for 44 minutes. They had a 14-0 run in the fourth quarter without their best player on the floor.
Mm-hmm.
The Knicks were shooting it. They were playing well on both ends of the court. Indiana couldn't stop New York. It looked like just a matter of time before the Knicks would have a nice, easy, double-digit victory against the Indiana Pacers in Game 1. Then, oops, things changed. Aaron Nesmith started banging threes, and before you know it, it was a game. Tyrese Halliburton hit one of the kookiest shots in the history of basketball off the back iron. Then it went through the hoop. Game was tied, went to overtime. Indiana made the plays late to get the victory. The Knicks...
as Halliburton pointed out.
Exactly. And New York loses to Indiana in game 1. Here is the shot. I don't know if this is the national feed or the local feed for the Pacers. Which one is it?
It's the TBS broadcast.
All right, here's the TBS broadcast.
TNT broadcast.
TNT broadcast of the Halliburton shot that at first looked like a game winner, but then
we all thought it was.
It tied the game and sent to overtime. Cut 6, Ed Bird.
Indiana with it. Halliburton. He'll take it. He'll backpedal a 3 for the win. And go! He got it!
And we find out that the big toe was on the line for Halliburton, and it wasn't a game winner, but it sent the game to overtime.
Yeah. Again, when it went down, we all. And by the way, that ball hung up in the air for an eternity.
It went out of the camera.
It went above the play clock.
Yes. We've seen those kind of goofy shots made in pickup games.
Yeah.
But for that shot at that point in time is unbelievable.
Because the funny thing is, he's backpedaling after he makes. He's all the way down at the other end of the court before it finally goes in.
That thing, it was, and first of all, Halliburton drove the lane to tie the game with a 2, but then he saw Mitchell Robinson, the big, in the lane. So Halliburton then turned back around. Plus, he said he kind of lost the handle a little bit. So he turned back around to go to the 3-point line to take the shot. So it was a goofy play to begin with. But, again, the Knicks, they even said they took their foot off the gas. But to me, again, you just watch an Indiana team that, first of all, they've had comebacks all through the playoffs, to be fair. And they got 5 guys on the court that can score. And they got 5 guys on the court, by the way, in crunch time, are very comfortable taking shots because they've been given the freedom to take shots in crunch time. Nesmith is a no doubt assassin from 3. He started hitting shots. What were the Pacers doing? Here, shoot some more. Here, shoot some more. And that's just recognition of the hot hand. The Knicks, for some reason, and I'll go Thibodeau on down, at some point, I don't care if you hit him. I don't care if you Jeff Galooly him and hit him with a pipe. You can't let Nesmith get shots off. That dude is on a heater like nobody's business at this point. And the Knicks, and there's talk, do they get tired because they only played 7 guys, and Indiana plays fast, and they're deeper. I think the Knicks took their foot off the gas, thought they had the game won.
Yeah.
I just do.
Yeah.
And they got sloppy on both ends of the court, and it bit them, and they had the most historic collapse and choke job in the league. The other thing about the difference, Indiana, because they run really good offense, and all their guys are comfortable taking big shots, the Knicks aren't. Everything's here, Jalen Brunson. At the end of the game, the ball goes to Jalen Brunson, and 4 guys stand there. Now, Brunson's phenomenal as a closer, don't get me wrong.
Yep.
But what happens if you need somebody else to do something? I mean, Karl Anthony Towns, he has no problem taking a big shot, but the rest of the dudes, it's almost like they're told, don't shoot unless you have to at the end. We want Jalen Brunson to have the ball.
And then Brunson and Karl Anthony Towns missed key shots right there at the very end, trying to extend the game, or trying to win the game, or extend the game, in overtime, and Brunson bricked on that one shot.
Brunson airballed, and then Towns barely got the front of the rim at the end of the game. So, what a game last night. But you know what? We'll see what the Knicks are made of, because it's one game, Tyler. You're only down 1-0. You got to win game 2.
This is going to be a fun series.
And you move forward. I think so, too. All right, up next, John Whittle from the Big Spur talking about his article he just dropped about Carolina baseball and what went wrong in the worst season, basically, in program history. That is next here on the Halftime Show with Ed Bird, Tyler Head, and Terry Ford on The Game. Halftime show. Terry Ford, Tyler Head, Ed Bird, punching the buttons and steering the ship for us as we go to 3 here on the game. John Whittle, our buddy from the Big Spur, dropping an article about Carolina baseball. The kind of getting inside of what just went wrong in the worst season in a proud program's history. Let's get John here. First of all, my friend, I appreciate you like always. Thanks for hopping on in short notice, man.
Absolutely. Always glad to come on with you, Terry.
All right, John, I mean, let's just get right to it. You touched a lot of things regarding what's going on with Carolina baseball. One of the things we'll start with is practice habits, or just not practicing in the way that we would expect practices to be held, or other schools are practicing at different rates. Kind of explain what was going on practice-wise with this team as everything moved from fall ball forward.
Yeah, it's interesting. You know, coaches have different practice habits and things that they value and so forth, but there are a lot of things that are pretty standard when it comes to coaching across college baseball. And you know, there's several things that South Carolina that haven't been done since before the start of the season. You know, there hasn't been any PFP work, for example. Like, that's PFP is pitcher fielding practice. I mean, that can range from anything from, you know, working on your pickoff moves and timing to fielding bunts, and those things just haven't happened since the start of the season. And you know, I've talked to several college coaches outside of the program, and that's a weekly thing. And you know, that it only makes sense. I mean, it's a part of practice. It's just something that goes on everywhere. And you know, you look at things like, you know, Bo Hollins at the end of the year threw a ball 3 feet behind Jake McCoy when he was trying to cover first base. And you know, maybe if you're doing that once a week with your fielders and your pitchers, I mean, those things don't happen. You know, it's just there's a lot there that's kind of standard that has not been happening this season.
John, again, thanks for coming on short notice, and great article, very long read for anybody that can hop over to thebigspur.com and check it out. One thing that a lot of people are drawing the most attention to is the lack of use of TrackMan. And again, a lot of detail in the story about it. So in your best summary, what exactly went down with Paul Mainieri and the pitching technology that everybody around the country is using these days?
Yeah, and this is standard now and has been for, you know, close to 10 years. You know, maybe not quite long, but it's been very prevalent for 10 years and standard, you know, the last half a dozen. You know, TrackMan is used by pitchers and hitters all the time. You know, we get the home run distances tweeted out immediately. I mean, that's TrackMan technology that's being used. Your spin rate, your exit velo, your velocities, like everything can be measured by that. And you know, it's something that provides immediate feedback for, and you know, it's very useful for hitters. It's imperative for pitchers to be able to get that instant feedback. And you know, it's something that they are not using in bullpen work, which is really when you need to use it most. I won't say it was never used, but it was rarely used, and that's when you need it most. You get instant feedback on you know what a pitch is doing for you. You know, if you've been struggling with something, it provides that instant analysis, and you can get that real time information and make tweaks to what you're doing. And you know, that was not being used. Now TrackMan's used, you know, for during games, and they get reports afterwards on, you know, what happened in that game. But you know, it's not being utilized near to the degree. And you know, Wake Forest made waves back when, you know, they were making their run and doing their thing with having their pitching lab, and you know, South Carolina went out and got that technology, and that's in addition to TrackMan. And you know, that has hardly been utilized at all. That's only been fired up twice this season, and the first time was just to get baseline reports, you know, when you know, players got here. So you have all these tools to use, and you're not using them to their full extent or anywhere near capacity, and it hurts the players in their development.
John Whittle hanging out with us from the Big Spur, talking about the article he just dropped today regarding what went on behind the scenes at South Carolina baseball this year here on the Halftime Show. Terry Ford, Tyler Head, Ed Bird on the game. John, you also talk about players backsliding in productivity and development. Let's take a look at the development piece, because it feels like there was a lack of development, and some guys even backslid from what they had done the previous year.
Yeah, I mean, if you just look at the numbers year over year, I mean, it's kind of damning, both from a pitcher and pitching player standpoint. There's six guys on the roster from a pitching standpoint that came back, and basically every one of them performed at a lesser level than what they did the year before. Parker Marlott made a few strides in some ways when you compare his overall stats or SEC stats. But most of these guys either didn't take a step forward or took a big step back. Tyler Pitzer was really good last year for the Gamecocks. SEC Pitcher of the Week one week. And you look at him, and he finished with a 17 ERA in the SEC this year. Roman Kimball, I mean, God bless him. He was one of South Carolina's starters last year in SEC play for a while, and he didn't perform great. He had a 6.75 earned run average last year, but that would have been third best on the team this year. If you take that ERA from SEC play last season and moved it over to this season, and he couldn't even get into a game. It's just you look at guys offensively, and Kennedy Jones, obviously did not perform to what we thought he would. Ethan Petrie took a step back in a lot of ways, especially from a power standpoint. I mean, his OPS, in SEC play dropped about 150 points from last year. Blake Jackson, he did a couple of things a little bit better. His on base percentage was a little bit higher in SEC play, but his OPS dropped a good bit. His slugging percentage fell off the map. I mean, there's just guys, when you look year over year, I mean, guys that you have a sample size of going against SEC competition in this program, and you look at performance year over year, and not only did they not get better, they got worse.
John Whittle with us from the Big Spur. I hate to put you on the spot and ask you, because there's so much stuff here, John. We could do hours. Can you come back for another segment, man? Next segment?
Sure.
All right, appreciate you. John Whittle from the Big Spur. Come back, continue our conversation about John's article he dropped on the Big Spur about just what happened regarding Carolina baseball's very difficult season. We'll get back on that at the halftime show right here on The Game. Halftime show with Terry Ford, Tyler Head, Ed Bird. Forget the greatest day in the history of the world. We're punting that today, my man. We're moving on to talk to John Whittle, Big Spur. John staying with us for another segment to talk about his article he just dropped on thebigspur.com about a lost season in Carolina baseball and some of the things that went on behind the scenes. John, I mean, you touched on the TrackMan stuff and some of the head-scratching practice habits and players backsliding in productivity. Real quick, I want to focus in on the relationship because you have said this before. There's a disconnect between the coaching staff and the players. And then in your article, you kind of went into more detail. It seems like from what I read in the post that there was some issues as the year went along between the head coach and the coaching staff and the players whenever regarding that relationship. Yeah, please expound on that, John.
Yeah, I mean, I've as the season went on, obviously things got more difficult to manage on both sides. I'm sure there was a lot of frustration. And listen, the antidote for bad feelings is winning games, right? Like, you know, when losses keep piling up, everybody's getting frustrated, and you know that's understandable. Winning a few games, you know, cures a lot of problems, but you know players were constantly being told how bad they were over there, and you know that kind of seeped into public commentary too. I mean, you know, as I wrote in that story, you know, I first pointed it out publicly during the or after the Tennessee series with some of the things that were said, and went back and pointed out some things in the past that or in previous weeks that had been said that just don't resonate well in the locker room. And you know, it continues on, you know, throughout the year, and then you know you're asked a softball senior day question, and you know, just to talk nice about the group of guys who are playing their final weekend. And you know, he said a little bit more, but he said in part, you know, these guys may not hit 380 or hit 20 home runs or throw 95 miles an hour, but you know, and I didn't recruit these guys, but you know, they're my responsibility now, is, you know, what he had to say. And he said that he'll always have affection for them, and you know, a couple of things like that. But you know, those are the kind of things that wear on you as a player, and it creates an environment where, you know, you don't feel appreciated, you don't feel wanted, and you know, you want to feel supported by a coach. And you know, especially in baseball, you know, we talk all the time. You know, baseball is a game of failure. You know, you're a really good hitter if you get out only 7 out of 10 times. You know, and a lot of baseball coaches do a lot to build you up. Now, you know, they'll hold you accountable, but they'll try to make you feel good too, and try to keep your positive, keep some positivity happening. And that just wasn't the case around here, and that creates an environment that you know, folks don't want to be in.
And John, like you said, look, we all played sports growing up. We had coaches that were hard on us and coaches we didn't like and those kind of things. But there's a difference between being, you know, a hard-nosed coach and being somebody that's just creating this toxic type of environment. And as you referenced multiple times in the story, it seems like the rift between Mainieri and his players started very early on in the season and could have been a very big contributing factor to why we saw some of the just downright blatantly awful performances on the field this year.
Yeah, I mean, I think it started, you know, somewhat early in the season. I mean, it obviously got worse as the year went on. You know, there was a meeting after the Kentucky series where, you know, there was a meeting in the locker room where the players were just told, you know, y'all aren't good enough for you know, just to be concise about it, y'all aren't good enough, and we're going to have to go out and get a bunch of guys to be good around here. And there's some truth in you know, needing to upgrade the talent. There's no doubt about that. There's no doubt about it. I don't think anybody, certainly not me, coming on this show or anywhere else, and tried to present a case that this was a championship type of squad. You know, I know we talked about it on here. I felt like this team was probably a sub-500 team in the league. I had them at 14-16 going into the year, so we're not painting a picture of being, championship caliber, but, the talent level was a lot different than this. And, when you keep being told over and over again and that, you're not good enough, it wears on you. And, there were some obvious signs that things weren't going well, and it was getting worse. And when your coaches and your players aren't really lining up and aren't on the same page, and you don't believe in each other, that's when things like the Florida series happened, the Auburn series happened, and that Kentucky series was after that Kentucky series, when that meeting happened, I think a lot of the players, I think that was kind of the boiling point, and you saw it in some of the games that they played afterwards. That's when things really started getting out of control from a results standpoint.
John Whittle with us from the Big Spur, talking about the article that John just dropped, bigspur.com, about what happened behind the scenes in a very difficult season for Carolina baseball in 2025. Halftime show here on The Game. John, it seems like a lot of things I'm reading come from like an older school mentality of coaching, whether it's TrackMan, whether it's the relationship with the players. It just seems like it's, and I know that Coach Mainieri's away from the game for 3 years, but that's 3 years. That's not 13 years or 15 years. It feels like some of this just comes from a mentality of not understanding the modern player or the modern game. Am I totally off base with that?
No, I don't think you're off base with that at all. It's different ways of coaching, and the modern athlete is changed, especially from a baseball standpoint. And you have all these tools that people are looking for, that players are looking for, and you're not using, and it's going to be harmful in recruiting when folks see that these aren't being used. And I don't really understand why, but yeah, I mean he has a very old school approach with players, and the way he interacts and the way he speaks to them, and the culture and is very old school, and that's okay if you have the right guys that you that you like, you can do that with. But I that's becoming a lot. Those players are few and far between now at this point, I feel like.
All right, John, last thing for you. And again, my man, I appreciate you very much for jumping on in very short notice to talk about your article. All right, moving forward to year two of Coach Mainieri, and it feels like that's where we're trending for year two. With all these things, give us a little slither of hope before we let you go. How can this get back on the right track after knowing what you have found out about year one? How can this get back in the right direction in year two? Does it take a lot of changing by an old school coaching staff, or is that oversimplifying things?
It's a great question. South Carolina, the athletics department is planning on giving the baseball program a lot of funds to go out and try to buy players. And heck, that's what we need to call it now, buying players. So that's going to be beneficial. If assuming this House settlement goes through, dollars for baseball are going to come down significantly from the NIL era to the rev share era. And if South Carolina packs on the rev share dollars, which is what I believe is going to happen, at least as we sit here today, that's going to give South Carolina an advantage to get better players and maybe some others. But at the same time, you've got to be able to convince those guys to come in regardless of the money. So, you've got some really good freshmen who are currently on the roster, and I think a few of those guys are going to stay. And but those are the encouraging things when you have guys like a Bo Hollins who was phenomenal this year and doesn't get enough credit and should have been freshman All-SEC. I can't believe that he wasn't. KJ Scobie had a really good year. I'm high on Gavin Braylon. I know his numbers don't look great, but I've been high on him ever since he signed with the Gamecocks. And, so you've got some young pieces to build around, but, a lot of schools have young pieces too. Like I said, Bo Hollins was left off the all-freshman team. There were 12 12 guys on the all-freshman team in the SEC, and none of them were Gamecocks. So that means that not only do the other programs have good players, they've got good freshmen too. So, it's going to be a challenge. I mean, somebody said to me the other day, and I hadn't even thought about this, said, you can double South Carolina's SEC win total next year and you still don't make the NCAA tournament. So, it's there's a lot to do this offseason, and, some of it is certainly going to be with getting players in, and you have to think that there's going to be some self-evaluation, self-scouting, so to speak, within the program on what they need to do differently from a coaching staff standpoint and an operational standpoint in terms of, better positioning players to succeed. At the end of the day, I believe the great coaches get the most out of their players and give their players every opportunity to be successful. And, I don't think that those two benchmarks were hit at all this year.
John Whittle from the Big Spur, always appreciate you, my friend. You know that. And again, thanks for hopping in short notice, man.
Absolutely. Always appreciate talking with you guys. Y'all take care.
All right,
Thanks,
you too, John. That's John Whittle from the Big Spur. We will come back at our Firehouse Subtext the hour, get ready for the postgame show, and take a minute to maybe discuss what we've just found out in the last two segments from John Whittle from the Big Spur. It's a halftime show. Ed Bird, Terry Ford, Tyler Head on the game. All right, our Firehouse Sub text the hour here in a minute, 803-404-6100. Also, our handoff sponsored by Little Pigs on Alpine to Elijah Campbell. Before that, though, let's you want to go see Styx? Very simple, 803-404-6100. We're doing a text to win. First 5 folks on the text line, just text Styx. And one of the first 5 folks will get tickets to go see Styx.
But between the Marshall Tucker Band and Styx, are we just doing classic rock?
Yeah, man.
We're just hitting all the highs of the 80s here, giving away tickets.
You guys are too young for this, and Ed Bird will know it. What was that? It was what was that called? Southern Fried Rock from K-Tel. They had this because this company called K-Tel used to put out records.
Yeah.
One was Southern Fried Rock, and the member of the commercial goes, "Crank it up, dude."
Listen, if there is one song you want me to sing at the top of my lungs, "Come Sail Away," oh, I'm all about it.
There you go. Well, some of that later Styx, though, like Mr. Roboto, but some of the earlier Styx was, it was nice. A little Paradise Theater, "Come Sail Away," Pieces of Eight. I remember when we were little kids skating to Renegade, which they played Steelers games.
Yep, they still do.
That was the all-guys skate, and dudes just killed each other.
Sure.
It was like roller derby and WWE for 3.5 minutes. I mean, if you walked out with your eyeball still in socket, you did good on the all-boys skate. Yes, absolutely. All right, 803-404-6100 on the Firehouse Subtext line. Hit it.
So, nameless texter, in Whittle's article, there's reference to Roman Kimball entering the transfer portal and Paul Mainieri not wanting to meet with him after something that his dad had wrote on Facebook, and a texter shared us that Facebook post from Jeff Kimball, Roman's dad, that reads, "Well, it's with the heavy heart that we bid farewell to Gamecock baseball. It's been an honor to be a part of the family. I only wish this was as successful as the previous 2, but that's what happens when coaches who don't know how to coach and just yell and berate players all season are put in charge. Well, I hope the team eventually turns it around. Unfortunately, it won't be soon, but these two, with these 2 people in charge, forever to thee." That's by Jeff Kimball, who is Roman Kimball's dad, on Facebook.
Again, it just shows you to the point of the disconnect that John was writing about on Big Spur that we just talked with John about. That's part of this. Maybe you heard about the berating and yelling and things of that nature. Look, it feels like from what John just told us in the article that we've all 3 read, that it's a very old school mentality that Paul Mainieri brought, an old school philosophy. And I've played for guys like that. We've all played for guys like that.
We've all played for hard-nosed coaches, but there's a difference.
I think there's here's what I always think. You can play for a hard-nosed coach if you know that he's also your biggest cheerleader, right? He's yelling at you or berating you because he's trying to make you better. And this is going to make you better. And it's one of those things that later on, after you've played for that guy, you understand maybe some things more. I'll give you an example. The hardest of hard-nosed in a different era was Bobby Knight. If you ever read the book Season on the Brink, you go, oh, my God. But do you know all those players, after they graduated, what they would do? Come back and see Knight. Because they thought in all of that stuff that Bobby Knight did, deep down inside, he had their best interests at heart. Like when Landon Turner, one of his players, was paralyzed in a car accident, you know who sat by his side every day? Bobby Knight. When Mike Krzyzewski's mom got sick, you know what with Mike Krzyzewski take care of his mom? Bobby Knight. Because deep down inside, they knew, Knight screamed and cussed at us and threw stuff at us, but he also loved us. And he showed that in other ways. You want to know that a hard-nosed coach is also, he loves you and he trusts you and he's trying to make you better, and this is his way of making you better. And I don't know if we're getting that feeling from this, guys.
No, I'm not.
From what we're reading and seeing. I don't know if we're and it's a different player today. And you've got to understand that as a hard-nosed coach.
Yeah.
You can't coach like you did 10 years ago with players today.
Well, and in that article, too, they talked about him saying in the locker room, I'm just going to go get new players.
Go to the other mic.
Nope. There it is.
This one right here.
There
Oh,
you
that's
go.
better.
Now I get you. Now we can hear you.
Now we can hear me. Yes, but they played like they all knew they weren't going to be back next year, and it made it certainly seem like they weren't welcome to, based on some of the excerpts from that story.
It feels like a massive disconnect, according to what John Whittle, his sources told him. All right, Elijah Campbell postgame show. More on this coming up next here on The Game.